If you are new with us and you have not been able to fill one of these, it's just a connect card. It's our way of connecting with you, yes, but most importantly, we want you to connect with our ministry. On this card, it has a few options for you to fill out. One of the biggest things we want you to do is just consider joining one of our community groups. That's going to be kind of our first announcement tonight. We have community groups that happen throughout the week. We have a co-ed group that meets every Sunday night at 7 o'clock p.m. That is at the Bozeman's house. So if your week is crazy busy, like I'm sure many of you are, you can do that at 7 o'clock p.m. every Sunday night. Free food, incredible people, great time for that. Then on Monday nights at the Charger Union at UAH, you do not have to be a UAH student, but that is the meeting place for it. It's in the Charger Union. The ladies have a group led by Abby and Caitlin. And where's Caitlin at? I think she just walked out. But yeah, Abby's right here. So if you have any questions, she'll be able to help you out with that. And then guys, we got Jim Kirshner and Ben Tapp right here. If you got any questions about joining the guys group Monday nights at 6 o'clock, go see them. Really the purpose of the community groups are this. Man, you guys are... The purpose of the community groups are this. We want you to take and have an opportunity for you to actually apply God's word. A lot of times we go from service to service, from church to church, and we hear a lot of incredible things. God speaks to us, but very rarely do we get to decompress that and talk about that with other people. And so it's an opportunity for you to do that, as well as build relationships that are going to last a lifetime. And so that's what our community groups are about. Our ministry, we seek to do one thing. We really do want to glorify God with our lives as disciples making disciples. That's our purpose. That's our mission. That's what we want to do. And I have a couple more announcements for you about this week. We have our family night, which is where all of our community groups, our life groups, our entire ministry itself comes together for a night of dinner and games and worship. We're going to do that at the Bozeman's house. And I don't know, Jess, if you can use your fancy magic back there. But the address, we can either put it on the screen or ask us, and we'll give you the address to the Bozeman's house. They just moved, so if you're used to going to their old house, they're probably not going to be there. But it is at their new place this Sunday. We want you to be there. If this is the only thing that this may be the first opportunity for you to connect with us outside of the walls of the church. But we're going to have great food. We'll be playing some games and worship, and really talking about, as we walk through the book of James, really kind of applying that together. So it'll be a great time, family night this Sunday. And then we have October the 19th. We have Sadie Robertson coming here to our church. So if that's an event that you're interested in, you have Holland who's coming to do music, Anthem Lights, Chris McClarney. They're all coming to lead worship and have a good time there. If you want to go to that concert, you can buy tickets at premierproductions.com, or the cheap route, the college route. If you want to go for free, let me know, and I can give you a job to do at the concert. You can either take tickets at the door. You're not taking tickets. You're scanning tickets or selling merch or moving equipment, those types of things. But you can get into the concert for free there. If it's something you want to do, talk to me and we'll get you set up with that. The last announcement is this. We're going to Passion January 1st through the 3rd. If you've heard of Passion or ever wanted to go and haven't been able to, or don't really know what it is, it's about 60,000 other college students and young adults worshiping Jesus together. It's a 3-day tour, if you will, and so we're all going to Atlanta, Georgia together for that. If you want to go to that, let me know, or you can register at our whitesburgbaptist.org/college ministry, and we'll get you all set up there. $50 just to reserve your spot, so you don't have to have the entirety now, but just $50 will hold your spot with that.
Who brings the power of sin and darkness? Whose love is mighty and so much stronger? The King of glory, the King of love, all kings. Who takes the whole earth with holy thunder? Who leaves us breathless and awe and wonder? The King of glory, the
excited that you guys are all here, especially Mr. Jerry. In case you guys didn't know already, Mr. Jerry is bringing the word tonight, and I'm stoked because I feel like we haven't heard from him in like forever. So this week, I wanted to do something a little different, and honestly, just because it made me happy and Tyler requested it. We're doing a Phil Wickham week. If you don't know who Phil Wickham is, he's fantastic, and he's one of my favorite Christian artists. But one of his songs, is a very, very old song. Like, it was on his sing-along album in like 2010, which means it originally came out in 2006. So, I know that's not super old, but it's old and relatively new. However, this song is one of the first songs that I ever led worship with. So this song has a special place in my heart. And it also is a beautiful representation of the gospel. It goes through the story of Jesus, and it is beautiful and it's incredible. And I ask that if you don't want to sing the words, if you don't know the words, that's okay. You're welcome to sit down and listen. You're welcome to raise your hands and praise and not say anything if you don't know the words. You're welcome to sing as loud as you want to if you do know the words. And even if you don't, the words will be on the screen. But I wanted to share the song with you guys, and we may do it again later, I don't know. But for right now, this is True Love.
Come close, listen to the story. About a love more faithful than the morning. The Father gave His only Son.
storms of Hurricane Irma and Hurricane Harvey and the hurricane that's over Puerto Rico right now. God, I pray that you will, through all of this destruction, just make your glory evident, God. You are good, Father, even when it doesn't seem like it. You know exactly what you're doing, and your ways are perfect. God, I pray that you will help us to understand that even when things seem really, really bleak, that you are still God, and you are still on the throne, and you still love us, and you still care about us. Make yourself evident this evening. In Jesus' name, amen.
That was so awesome. Including your percussion. That was great. Thank you, guys. Guys, I have missed you all so much. I want you to know I don't only come on the nights that I'm speaking, because I was supposed to speak a couple of weeks ago and I come in. So I've just been traveling and sick and all kinds of bad stuff. So I'm really glad to be here tonight. I want to talk to you about a couple things right off the bat. One thing, I guess you've heard sayings that those who can't do teach, right? And oftentimes people who teach, it's only because they love the sound of their own voices, right? I'm here to tell you both are true completely. And I've been teaching a really long time, and I teach a lot of different things. So that's how I know. One of the things I teach in my job is system safety. It's very exciting sounding, isn't it? System safety, which is you look at a system and you say, how can I make the system safe? It's pretty much that simple. But it's actually can get kind of complex, because like I've worked on the Space Shuttle solid rocket boosters and every major missile program and a bunch of UAVs and UGVs, unmanned ground vehicles and that kind of stuff. But the guy who trained me on how to teach system safety is like, he was the guru of the 20th and 21st century in that subject. And he was awesome. I mean, the guy could just, you would just sit and just listen to him for 8 hours and not even realize that you hadn't eaten or gone to the bathroom or anything, because he was just that good. And he could make a dry subject really interesting. And so I trained under him, and I learned how to teach system safety from him. Well, it came to the point where he was getting too old. He was, when I met him, he was somewhere between 80 and 2,000 years old. And then I was getting busy, and so I couldn't teach, and I had trained under him since 2004 on how to teach the subject. So he brought in some other guys to teach, and they felt like they were really ready for the job. And we sent them out. They went out with me a few times, and I taught modules, and they teach the modules, and then over 3 days we teach a class. Well, I started noticing. Then they were just going out on their own. I started noticing that the material we were using was being changed. And the reason was they were not experts in that topic. And so a lot of the things that they were supposed to teach was over their heads. And they were getting people in the audience or in the classes that had been doing system safety for 40 years maybe at NASA or for the Army or somebody like this. And so they started dumbing down the material to make it so they wouldn't look bad. And then it wasn't that challenging. So what do you think happened from that?
People didn't pay attention to your lectures.
Yeah, one of three things would happen pretty much. Either folks, and by the way, they were also teaching some wrong things because they didn't know any better. So you'd have newbies would come in and they'd be learning things wrong and going out and applying it. Now, when you're sitting there and you're looking at explosives and you're applying something that's wrong to them, that can be bad. In theory, right? Not in practice, but in theory. Or second, like you said, you have some people in there and they get ticked off because they would feel like they had just wasted their money and their time because they weren't learning anything. It was all stuff they already knew because it had been made so basic. Or worse yet, you had some folks who would just get mad and who would badmouth us and give us a bad reputation because the material just wasn't what, it didn't meet any of their needs and was beneath them. That's bad. Another thing I teach, and I've taught since 1984, martial arts. So,
120 degrees. 120 degrees.
very good. See, somebody has learned something already in here. That's really good. And one of the styles that I'm fairly high ranked in is called Eagle Claw Kung Fu, or China. Okay? And it was the Eagle Claw is the Kung Fu that was of the Imperial Guard. In China, they did not teach it to anybody else except the Imperial Guard. It's supposed to be superior to all the other animals' Kung Fu, right? It makes sense, perfect sense. You know, 'cause an eagle can take out the sloth Kung Fu, and it can take out the the termite Kung Fu, any of those. But sloth Kung Fu is very meticulous and slow. If that's what your question was. But anyway, so Eagle Claw, there was this. I was training this guy. He was actually he was a national champion many times over in karate, and he was learning Kung Fu, and the guy had practically 0% body fat. I mean, it was funny. I would go to work out with weights in the same gym he did, and what my max was, he'd pick it up and go, "Oh, you're done with that? Great." Yeah, I'm warming up. You're getting ready. The guy was just pure muscle, right? So, in this one move in the Eagle Claw, it's very first move in the kata. You block here, and you come in here, and you do this, and you do this. And what you're doing is, you're blocking a punch, so you're leaning back out of it, right? Okay, you're all learning this now. You can't see, you just get in a better position. Here, and then you lean in, your arm lifts their arm up in the air to put it in perfect position. You're inserting your thumb between a couple of muscles, and then you're turning, and you're actually causing those muscles to be paralyzed to some degree, because you tear them a little bit. Okay, and that's the whole idea. The whole idea of Eagle Claw is to debilitate your opponent so they can't keep fighting. All right.
Can you teach me that?
Hmm?
Can you teach me that?
Oh, sure. So anyway, he, actually I want to teach you black belts. It's kind of, but anyway. So do that first and then call me. Well, this guy, he didn't remember the explanation of what you're supposed to do. And he went back to his class, because he was like a 5th degree black belt. And he's teaching his guys, and he's saying, yeah, so this, you block, and then you put your thumb into the guy's mouth, and then you snap his neck.
Okay. I'll learn that too.
I would love to learn that. I mean, this guy could probably do it, because he had, arms like my thighs, right? But I mean, he had it completely wrong, and he's going out and he's teaching. And so there are other people, I mean, I'm running into folks that are going, yeah, let's do the snap the neck technique. And go, it's not the snap the neck technique, It's important when you're teaching, would you agree, to get it right to some degree?
Yes.
To some degree. And I say that to leave myself some leeway, because, I'm a teacher, and I do make errors on occasion. Probably some already tonight. You never know. So as we start into James chapter 3, this is his topic. He kind of jumps from the topics he's been talking about to this point, and he's going to start talking about teachers. So if somebody would, please read for us all, loud and proud and strong, verse 1 of James chapter 3.
I'll do it.
Go for it.
Dear brothers and sisters, not many of you should become teachers in the church, for we who teach will be judged more strictly.
There you go. So, who would not, by the way, like to be considered to be a teacher? Teachers are cool, right? To be an expert in the topic. To be someone that people are coming to saying, share with me what you know, right? So here we have, in this first century, as James was writing this, you had people who are brand new into Christianity. And think about the setting they were in. Now, in the synagogue, who were the teachers? What were they called? Rabbis, exactly. And so rabbis were esteemed largely in society. They were learned. People would go to them with problems and so forth. And now you've got these guys who were fishermen and tax collectors and all these different positions who are being elevated to the position of authority like a rabbi. And so these new Christians are sitting there going, that's really cool. I would love for people to look up to me like they look up to those guys. So in a synagogue, in the service, on Sabbath, you had this rabbi would get up to teach, but there was also a period where folks could get up and they could, if they were strangers, and they could share and they could teach something they'd learned. And I think the Greek word for that was didaskalai. And it comes from, it's where we get the word didactic from it. which means to say something or speak something with the idea of teaching, especially teaching a moral principle. So they would go up and they would do that. And so a lot of these folks to whom James is talking were folks that were doing this. And so as new Christians, they loved the attention and to seem like they had something they figured out that nobody else had. And so this is why James wrote this. Because they were getting up and they're going, well, I want to share for you about how I learned when I was hit on the head while plowing the true nature of God. You know. And so they're sharing something that they've learned, right? Make sense? So you can understand how James is saying this. But it's kind of scary because he says, not many of you should become teachers, my brothers. For you know that we who teach will be judged with greater strictness. Stricter judgment. Judged with greater strictness. How would it be if you walked into school, into your class, and your teacher said, I'm giving a test, and by the way, Kaylin, I'm going to grade you stricter than anybody else in the class.
I go to the principal.
Right, yeah, you go, what? Or the dean if you're in college. It's the principal. Right? Make
If some
sense?
college teacher does that, there's something wrong.
I've actually had one professor do that.
Did she get fired?
No, he did not. It's a long story. I'll tell it another day. Would that be fair to you? Would that be right? What would you think was your recourse? Your first test you get back, everybody else is happy because they got 90s and 80s and you get a 42. You'd be salty. You'd be thinking, I need to get out of here, I need to do something else. Well, that's kind of why James was saying this. He wanted the new Christians and us to take it seriously. And so then he started into, I'll ask you guys, why did James say this? Specifically, why do you think he said it?
Because if you're teaching something, you have to know it yourself so you don't teach it improperly. Like you said, if you teach it improperly, then those people that you teach it to are going to go out and misconstrue the information.
So what are the consequences of that?
People are going to learn wrong information.
Okay.
Bad things will happen.
How about if you're talking about in the early first century church? What's wrong with that? Exactly. Doctrines may have to be something that's actually not. And you've got falsehood, and you've got guys that go out there saying, yeah, it's important to believe in Jesus, but you also have to, and it was, some guys were saying it was Jesus and. Okay, if anybody ever tells you you have to have Jesus and, look really long and hard at that, because, no, it's Jesus. You need to have a relationship with Jesus Christ, not Jesus and baptism. Jesus and no dancing. Jesus and your skirt doesn't come above your ankles. Whatever else the and is. Okay? It's Jesus that you have to have. So, yeah, the consequences. Like I said, what were the consequences, for instance, in my story of the two guys, the black belt who was teaching it wrong? What is a potential consequence there?
Somebody's going to need that fight. They're going to perform poorly.
Yeah. You've got Casper Milquetoast, who weighs 84 pounds, and he's fighting, Thor Lundquist. And he goes up and goes, ha! Snap that! Ow! Right? And Thor is going to be mad at him because he just jammed his thumb in his gum.
People
Right?
could die.
So people could die! How about the system safety? The system safety class. If you're teaching folks how to apply safety incorrectly.
People could die.
People could die!
And explosions.
And explosions and launches. The safest place to stand is directly behind the plume when the missile launches. Right? Okay, how about in the first century church?
People could die.
People could spiritually die. This is you. People, Ananias and Sapphira did die. That's right. So it's important. There are consequences that we wanted to avoid. Yeah. So James then decided to expand on the challenges and on the consequences and on some of the things associated with this with teachers. But it does not apply only to teachers, because as I mentioned, a lot of the folks who were wanting to get up that he was applying this to were just regular Christians. So he gave us 5 points in the next few verses. 5 points where he expanded upon how important it was and why it was what we're going to call the taming of the tongue. Yes. Yes. So somebody, if you would, please read for me verse 2.
For we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body.
Okay, so right off the bat. Point number 1 that James is going to point out for us, everybody makes mistakes. Oh, I just thought of a song I learned from Sesame Street as a little kid. You ever hear this? Everybody makes mistakes? Oh, yes, they do. Right? Okay, never mind. Sorry, we'll edit that out later on. He says, for we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man. Now, this term perfect man doesn't mean perfect man. It's a term, the same term was used for Job in chapter 1, verse 1. When God points and says, have you noticed Job? He is upright and righteous. Standing righteous. Something to that effect. He's righteous in something. He's a good guy. Okay? Depends on what version you use. That's what we're talking about. A guy who is someone to be edified, not idolized, but somebody who is to be looked at as being a mentor or somebody to give you points on what you should do. Let me ask you, you ever heard that the eye is the window to the soul?
Yes.
Okay. That is not biblical.
Nope.
It is not, that you do not find that phrase in the Bible. There is a passage over in Proverbs that's something similar to that, but that's not in the Bible. Okay. So the eye is the window of the soul. So if that's the case, what is the tongue?
The road.
The road. Okay, I'll go with that. What else? What does the tongue reveal?
Your heart.
Oftentimes. Yeah. Why do people say stupid things?
Because they're dumb.
Largely. Many times. Maybe they don't, we'll say it this way. They don't fully process the ramifications of what they're thinking before they share it verbally with those around them.
That's what I do.
So, all right, we got some Proverbs for you tonight. Oftentimes the tongue reveals what's in the thoughts. Would you agree with that?
Yes.
Okay. So he says, for we all stumble in many ways, and if anyone does not stumble in what he says, he is a perfect man, able also to bridle his whole body. Spiritual maturity requires a tamed tongue. For you to be a spiritually mature person, I'm going to put this out there, and this is not my opinion, this is biblical. It is that you don't just throw out whatever comes into your brain at every moment. Until your brain is entirely in line with God. Then it's okay. Make sense? Spiritual maturity of being able to tame your tongue. So that you just don't, under your breath, do like I do and every so often have to claim Tourette's. Sorry I said that's the Tourette's. I don't know why I said that. Idiot. It just kind of comes out. I don't know what the deal is. Yeah. Somebody read for me verses 3 to 4. We're just going to go through this the rest of the way.
Now if we put bits into the mouths of horses so that they obey us, we direct their whole bodies. And consider ships, though very large and driven by fierce winds, they are guided by a very small rudder wherever the will of the pilot directs.
All right. So, James is communicating in verses 3 and 4 that even though the tongue is small, it's got a lot of power. Now let me ask you, how can a tongue control the body?
Put your foot in your mouth, it takes you everywhere.
That's right. It's painful when you pull muscles. That's right. How can the tongue control the body? Think about it.
Have you ever said yes to something you didn't want to do and had to do it anyways?
That's a huge one. Or saying, yeah, I've done some roofing in my days. I've put a lot of shingles up. Oh, yeah. I carry like 5 or 6 pallets at a time. And they go, great, we're doing some roofing next week. And And then immediately you're looking up on the internet, first, how do I spell roofing? Right?
Tell 'em you're washing your dog.
Great. Oftentimes you might speak before you think, and that commits you to things, or gives people impressions about you that you then have to either live down or correct. Right? Does this make sense?
Usually live down.
So, but I want to look at this and then say, okay, the bit controls the horse. So the rider can pull on the bridle and the horse turns, right?
Sometimes.
The rudders we're talking about were small. They were like oars that would be behind a boat. And so that would turn the boat, right? Can your tongue control someone else?
You put it on
That's kind of gross.
them. It works.
Can your tongue control someone else? How?
I believe what you're saying.
Sure.
Joel Osteen.
Yeah, we'll go down that road. But yeah. Okay. You can say something that leads them to think one thing, and they take action on it. Agreed? So your tongue could also control to some degree other people. So verses 3 and 4, the second big point, even though the tongue is small, it's a very powerful thing. Words mean things. Now, in the Old Testament in particular, it was believed that when you spoke something, your words went out into the world to fulfill their destiny. Now, I'm not joking, I'm not making this up. So when I would say something, whatever I would speak had some kind of destiny that it was going to create, cause something to happen. So therefore, does that mean, if you think of it in those terms, do your words mean a lot? And what you say? In the very next passage, verses 5 to 6, somebody read those please for me.
Likewise, the tongue is a small part of the body, but it makes great boasts. Consider what a great forest is set on fire by a small spark. The tongue also is a fire, a world of evil among the parts of the body. It corrupts the whole body, sets the whole course of one's life on fire, and is itself set on fire by hell.
Okay, so we just were saying the tongue is powerful, we know it's small. Now we're saying, and it's evil. How can I control someone else and you consider it to be evil? Sorry, I gotta take a break. One second. Do you mind? I forgot I needed to tell you. I know you've been doing a lot of stuff with Ben, Lee, with Bible State, and everything, but I was talking to Ben the other day. And he's telling me he really doesn't like you. I feel as your friend, as I'm close to you, I need to share that with you because I know you want to know. Even though he told me in confidence, I don't really like him.
He's sitting right there.
All right, let's get back. So, now, here's the scary thing, and I thought very carefully about who I was going to use for this. I didn't use Alan and Kate because they could both hurt me really bad. Even though Jim knew I was making it up, and there's no truth to it, at the same time, probably inside there's a little something going, right? Is that a good example of how the tongue can create evil?
Yes. Makes people die.
Oh, yeah. I mean, I was reading, I thought, in my research, I thought, okay, I looked at wars that were created by things people said. And there were some weird ones out there. There was the one up in Washington State back, I can't remember, it was like the turn of the century, 1800s, where a pig got into this guy's property and he shot the pig. Well, the pig was from Canada because it was on Hudson Bay, Hudson Island, and so they got into an argument, and next thing you know, the Americans brought out a couple, like 40 guys with guns to repel the Canadians. So the Canadians brought in their warships. Canada has warships. And they came in, and it was all because of a misunderstanding between these two guys. And literally what the guy said was, I shot your pig because he was eating my potatoes. Except he said it in a Washington accent. And so the Canadian guy said, "Oh yeah, well your potatoes shouldn't have been inside my pig." Eh? Okay. And that started a war. That war was called the War of the Pig. Real true. Look it up. Okay. That's bizarre. It might be. It could be. That's very good. You also had back in the 1806, somewhere in there. You had in Africa the British governor. There was the king of, I can't remember the Antilles or something. I can't remember the name of the people. Antares. So it was something like similar to that. And their king was exiled for 4 years, from 1864 to 1870, so 6 years. He was exiled. 1870, the British governor in the area, to help out the people because they'd had no leader, stepped in and said, "You know what? I'm going to step in. I'm going to be your leader. I understand that here you guys have a golden stool." And they actually did. It was a stool made of gold. And he said, and this was hundreds of years old, and it was what the ruler would use when he was speaking to the people. It had a lot of rich history associated with it, a lot of rich traditions associated with it. And so the Brits said, "Bring out your gold stool so I can sit on it, because I'm going to rule you now." Okay? And they pretend not to be able to find it, He said, "Well, find it and bring it to me, okay?" And then he went off. Next, when his people went out to find the golden stool, they were met by warriors. Because his asking and showing so much disdain and so little care for the golden stool created a war. The entire nation went to war to where he had to send back word to Britain. And they had to send soldiers where he had been locked up with all of his people in their fort for their own protection for weeks. Words mean things. You say something stupid, it can cause some problems. So you want to be careful.
I cause problems as a job.
Sowing discord among the brethren is not actually one of the good things in the Bible. We'll get to that later on. Slander, profanity, lying, blasphemy, gossip, flattery. These are all things where the tongue does something wrong. The last thing that's in that verse, the verses we just read, though, kind of bugs me. What was the last thing that was said in verse 6?
Set on fire of hell.
Set on fire by hell. What do you think about that?
Sounds pretty accurate.
Sounds pretty accurate. Proverbs, I was going to read all these different Proverbs. 10:19, 15:4, 15:28, 21:23, 26:20, 18:21, 17:28, 12:13, 6:16-19. Let's read that one. That's the last one on my list. Somebody flip over there, please, and read Proverbs chapter 6, verses 16 to 19. All the other ones I mentioned have one comment about the tongue and what a problem it causes and how it's used wrongly and all that kind of stuff. 16 to 19 has 3 times it's mentioned. You got it? Go for it, Ben.
The Lord hates 6 things. In fact, 7 are detestable to him: arrogant eyes, a lying tongue, hands that shed innocent blood, a heart that plots wicked schemes, feet eager to run to evil, a lying witness who gives false testimony, and one who stirs up trouble among brothers.
Sowing discord among the brethren. Those are 3 of the 6 things, nay 7, that are detestable to the Lord. 3 of them have to do with your tongue and your speech. Let's finish this out. So that was the third thing. Not just that the tongue is small but powerful, but the tongue is small and can wreak horrible things. Somebody, if you would, please read verses 7 to 8. Back in James 3.
People. evil full of deadly poison.
This is going to be kind of scary. Usually when I'm speaking like this, I like to wrap it up and say, but all this, even though all this problem with the tongue, there's good news, because you can control it. What did it say just now, what you just read?
No one can tame the tongue. It is restless and evil, full of deadly poison.
Ooh. You do not have the ability, the strength within you to restrain your tongue. Okay, let's pray. No, okay. But God! To quote Evie Hill. I love that. There's two ways your reputation can be sullied. One is you do something. The other is somebody says you did something. You can't control that when somebody says something. You may not have done it, but somebody else is saying you did. And that can cause you all kinds of problems. Reputation, relationships, money, your job, right? But yet it says we cannot tame it ourselves. Let's finish it out, because maybe there is some bright. Somebody read for me verses 9 to 12.
With the tongue we praise our Lord and Father, and with it we curse human beings who have been made in God's likeness. Out of the same mouth come praise and cursing. My brothers and sisters, this should not be. Can both fresh water and salt water flow from the same spring? My brothers and sisters, can a fig tree bear olives or a grapevine bear figs? Neither can a salt spring produce fresh water.
It's kind of a conundrum, isn't it? We as Christians, oftentimes, we may have something, and also, Daniel, I wanted to share with you, be praying for Brock. You're not going to believe what's going on with him, okay? He's been dancing in Vegas. It's some kind of animal act. And I was talking about somebody else, and we need to be praying for him. Can you believe he's doing that? Oh my gosh, I'm letting you know. We need to be praying for him, okay?
You sound like Michael Scott.
You ever heard Christians do that?
Yes.
Yeah, be praying for him. Pray for him, won't you please? Thank you, because he needs it.
Bless him.
Oftentimes, bless him. That's right.
Bless him.
Bless him, Lord.
You sound like a root or something when you say that.
That's the point.
It's a church.
That's it. I'm a churchman. So these last verses, 9 through 12, are saying, how can you do both? And I thought, how could I communicate this? Let's say I took a pipe that normally had sewage going through it. Raw sewage. But I rinse it out really good.
Then you drink it.
How much would I need to rinse it out before you'd be willing to drink your drinking water out of it?
Probably once.
Okay, we got once. Anybody else want to join us?
Are you cleaning it with bleach?
No, I'm just running water through it.
Oh!
No, you run the water through it for a
That does
while.
nothing.
And after you run it through for a while, eventually it's
I'm
clean
dead
enough to
now.
drink, right?
What kind of sewage?
Why wouldn't you frost it?
Like from where? Like, are we talking like human feces or
Yeah,
like
we're talking
dog
black water.
feces?
Black water.
Because I can do dog feces.
How long would it take you before you were willing to drink from it?
Longer than you want.
Okay, so here's the thing. If you're not willing for that to be the same, how can you then, as a professing Christian, gossip, slander, lie, and then turn around and come to church and say, I love you, God. Thank you, and I praise you. Do we do that? Not to point at anybody, but is there a single one of us in this room that has not done something like that on occasion? And it all gets back to one thing. The tongue cannot be tamed by us. I would love to take the rest of the time tonight to tell you how to do it. But that's going to be next week. We're going to start on verse 13 next week. And then we start to get a little bit of what the answers are. But I just want to leave this with you. Words mean things. We need to take that seriously, especially as Christians. We need to figure out mature spiritual Christians. It is a necessity. Does that make sense? So, I love this because James, the whole book of James, is how to live out your faith. Faith without works is empty, right? I'm sure Tyler, I didn't see all the weeks, but sang for you one week, it's about useless as a screen door or submarine. Everybody know that one?
Say that again. Say it again.
Faith without works, it just ain't happening. It's about as useless as a screen door on a submarine. One is your left hand, one is your right. It takes two strong hands to hold on tight. Faith without works, a song you can't sing. It's about as useless as a screen door on a submarine. That's really old. It's like 2005. Faith without works is useless. James tells us how to live the Christian life. He's starting out in the first 12 verses here, chapter 3, telling us what our problem is. Do you recognize you have a problem if you've got any of that going on?
Yes.
Verses 13 and on, he tells us how to tame it, what the wisdom is that comes from above. So that's what we're going to start on next week. Let's pray. God, you are amazing. You've made us. You made it so that we have a choice. Through our words, through our actions, we can serve you, or we can serve ourselves. But often we can't do both at the same time. I pray that as we go through James, you would convict every single one of us how to be more and more the men and women you want us to be. How it is that so, as we're walking around, we don't have to say anything, but people would just sense we've got something to offer to them. I pray that more and more we will become your men. Thank you for each of these folks. I pray your blessing upon them this coming week. We've got so much going on. We've got not only school pressures of work maybe, but the weather stuff going on, and loved ones who are sick, and maybe some sickness or problems that we've got ourselves. And Lord, just keeps coming upon us more and more and more. Because it says in your word, without you, each generation is more wicked than the one before. I pray, Lord, that you would break the cycle in each one of our lives, in our families, in our friends' lives, and that you would use us to do it. I praise you for all of this, for the fact that you let us be a part of your salvation, that we share it with the world. I pray all this in the precious name of your Son, Jesus.